What's up, man?
Clicking it. Here we go. Welcome everybody to a special surprise Thursday stream, educational stream. We'll call it. I don't know. This is something new and fun. Something that I pitched to Jake here. Hi, Jake. Good morning. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
We'll get to
Thank you very much
intros
for having me.
in a minute. We appreciate having you here. I pitched to you and Josh a couple weeks ago, and said we should do a little live stream and talk about some CAD stuff. And you were gracious enough to agree to it, and I'm happy to have you here. So just to give everybody that's joining us on YouTube some context here, I am a CAD hack. I'm gonna just admit that right now.
We all are a little bit. That's fine.
Like most things in my life, I'm usually just like learning just enough to like get whatever project that I'm working on like done, right? So I'm self-taught. And in my journey in CAD started in the world of Tinkercad. Well, that's not entirely true. I mean, I learned some Autodesk back in college and stuff like that. So I've done some other CAD work and whatnot. But my real foray into like the 3D space, I guess technically was first SketchUp. I learned that for like architectural usage and stuff. We were doing some house remodeling and all that stuff. And of course, you immediately just get hooked and see the power of it and just like, oh, this is great. What can I do? But I realized really quickly, SketchUp was not designed for like actually modeling of product, or it can, but it's hacky. It's not really like, that's not what it's really meant for. And so I started, when I got into 3D printing, I started looking at free options, and of course Tinkercad was just coming on the scenes. And there was something about that browser-based model and the booleans and all that stuff that just like clicked with my brain. Like that, we're just adding shapes or we're subtracting shapes from each other, and I like that. And that was cool and it was great, and I actually like probably went way further with that than most would, right? Where I was just like creating all these really complicated, Boolean mishmashes,
but also complicated workarounds. Just going, oh gosh, I don't know any other way to do this other than to mash some shapes together.
It was just brute force CAD. Like that's exactly how I would describe that, right? It was we're just like throwing shapes together and chopping shapes out of each other. I mean, it's a very brute force approach, but it's great for kids and stuff when you're first trying to get the concept of, basics. What are primitives? Being able to manipulate the viewports and camera perspective and, some fundamentals, measuring, that kind of stuff. So great tool.
I think it's totally ideal for like introducing the concept of Boolean functions and like, oh, if you have two shapes and they are, clipping through each other, you can totally make them a combined thing or cut one from the other.
Yeah.
Tinkercad is phenomenal for that example, but I see people make this pitfall all the time where they go, great, now I'm going to stick with this and trudge through it for way too long instead of graduating.
And that's exactly why we're here, right? Because I think I'm a pretty pragmatic individual, and because I need the tool as a means to an end to achieve something else, oftentimes like I'm not prioritizing my actual like learning of said tool. Like mastery is not particularly important to me as it is just getting the job done. But you realize you take on a lot of technical debt when you do that, and that over time you actually are less efficient because you could be doing it way faster with better tools, right? It's what's the workshop equivalent where it's like, you could probably, cobble together some really interesting stuff if all you ever had was a drill press, right? And you're just drilling holes and things and trying to use it as a mill and, questionable safety, that kind of stuff. But
but someone in the background is yelling, just get a circular sword, just get the right tool.
You're drilling like 500 holes to like cut a line in something, it's something like that. And that's ultimately what my journey with CAD has become. I feel like I'm just using the drill press to like make linear cuts now, and when I should just be learning how to make proper, use the right tool for the job.
Have you read Nick Offerman's woodworking book? He's a guy that plays Ron Swanson.
Oh, I'm well familiar with Nick Offerman. I love that guy. I have not read that. I will have to put it on the list because I would love it. Oh my god.
He has this little bit where he goes, technically, you can make any woodworking project in the world with sandpaper. Technically. because it's all just about removing material. Technically, you could do that with sandpaper, but very quickly you go, this is the worst idea in the world. Nobody would do this.
Yeah.
You go,
Yeah. You could do a lot of things with that you probably shouldn't, but I mean, that sounds highly entertaining. I'm gonna have to make sure I check that out. For those of you joining us in the chat, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to ask questions and stuff. We have our first question already. Chasing Something asked, will there be a recording of this uploaded later? Yes, absolutely. We will post this to my YouTube channel. If you can't be with us for the whole thing, that's totally fine. Yes, Andrew does look different today. So typically I record on Fridays. We do a podcast about maker entrepreneurship. We've actually had CAD class on in the past talking about the business side of things. Your partner Josh, who focuses on a lot of the sales and marketing and other stuff, but also very proficient CAD individual himself,
definitely.
Inscription writer. So this is your guys' book. So we got to get the plugs out of the way. You guys just dropped this, right? Mastering Fusion 360.
Yeah, a couple months ago.
Tell us about the book. And by the way, guys, this is available for free. Yes, for free. Online. There's an online version. It's on Amazon. And Jake is going to tell us all about that real quick, right?
So the very, very brief history. So Josh and I, we are co-authors of the book Mastering Fusion 360. We work together in one of the largest makerspaces in North America, down in Costa Mesa. And we kind of came to the realization that there's so many different areas of making, whether it's laser printing, 3D printing, CNCing, and all of them really have this unified collection of CAD, and we didn't find anywhere that had really good CAD education.
Yeah.
We're all about accessibility, getting it as much as possible, saying, hey, if you don't have a 3D printer, go to your local library. They probably have one.
Yeah.
You don't need to buy SolidWorks, which is like $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's like you can get Fusion 360 for free. So making it as open and as accessible to as many people as possible is really kind of ethereal to us. So we produced the book where it goes over 28 projects that takes you from knowing literally nothing and taking you to pretty damn advanced. I would say absolutely that people have gone through this and halfway through they've said, do you know, I can finally make that product that I've been wanting to, that's been in the back burner for so many years. And so we see people take, you know, everything from the book and everything from our course and then just skyrocketing and just really impressing Josh and I, which we love to see.
It's so remarkably well done. So Mike in the chat is saying he wants. So first of all, let's tell people if they want to download the free digital copy, how do they go about doing that? Let me get a link in the chat. In fact, here, Josh, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you a mod in here so you can post a link for us.
Yeah.
And that should give you access to do so. But you can tell us as well here, Jake.
You guys can go to cadclass.org and you can go to the book link at the very top. You guys can download it completely for free. If you want to donate and keep the boat afloat, you're more than welcome to, but absolutely no pressure. Everything in the book is completely accessible for free. If you want to pick up a physical copy, I prefer to learn any softwares by book, but if you prefer on PDF, absolutely for free on there. All of the information gets updated every single month. So for you guys that don't know, Fusion 360 is it's an alive program. It is open source, so it's constantly getting updated and improved. Anytime people send them a bug, it gets fixed within the month. Mm-hmm. So most other CAD books, or basically any of the CAD education that Josh and I found, it was like, well, this may be great content, but it was made 2 years ago, so it's already gone. It's like the half-life of the education is so short, and so if you're not kind of keeping up with it, it really becomes worthless, unfortunately. So we're constantly updating.
It's not something that I would want to necessarily take on, just given the amount of revision control. But it sounds like you guys have come up with a really good system for it. So obviously, keeping the print book up to date. I mean, this is something that I'm sure textbook companies have had to deal with for forever. Obviously, revisions is a thing. But we're lucky we're in a time where the digital version can be updated very quickly,
instantaneously. Yeah,
and then once you've compiled enough changes and say, okay, it's probably time to do a new print edition, you've already basically done that in real time. So hopefully that workflow is smooth for you guys. And I
So-
gotta tell you guys, honestly, there's okay, so this book has 12, maybe 13 if you count chapter 0 chapters. Okay, very well laid out, lots of fantastic illustration. You guys are very clearly good teachers, and I know that this is going to do. It already is doing particularly well, as I understand it. Like,
yeah, we just sold our 1,000th physical book online.
That's amazing.
Really fantastic. I know.
And it's been
so
how
stoked.
long? Not even that long.
Couple months. We're #1 best book selling in 3D printing. We're in the top 10,000 books of all of Amazon. God knows how many books there are there. But as far as the additions and keeping everything fresh and updated, every single project we have in the book has a corresponding Discord link. So if you guys are ever stuck on anything, any minutia, you can pop in there, ask any questions. Josh and I, or a growing community, can answer essentially anything.
And is access to that Discord free?
Totally
Do
free.
you invite? How does that work?
On every single project, there's a little QR code. You can scan that, and it takes you right to the chat room. And with that, people then go, hey, this tool has changed. Hey, this looks a little bit different. This order of operation is actually way more efficient if you do it this way. And so we're like, fantastic. So we'll just add it to our change log, and then we can update the free book online pretty much instantaneously. And then, just as you said, at the end of the year, we just been compiling, improving, and then edition 2 comes out.
This is really amazing, and I don't want to get stuck on this too much because it's not really the purpose of this stream. But it's such a great time to be alive, because this is like the future of like knowledge sharing and learning. And I think one of the challenges that I'm sure Autodesk has had over the year. I mean, Autodesk has been around for a long time, and their portfolio of software has grown immensely. But you know, one of the bigger complaints of people that are going to YouTube to watch videos and stuff like that is it's so disjointed, and you know, you might be watching a video from 2 years ago, and the software is updating so quickly that your UI doesn't even look the same, right? And so it's a really hard way to learn when it's like what the person's talking about doesn't look the same as the tool anymore. And I know, you know, you guys don't control Fusion, and so it's not. It's a challenge, like when updates, you have to be on the spot about when updates are coming out and thinking about how do we need to update the graphics and what changes. But it sounds like it takes a village. You've got a good mechanism and a good community that helps facilitate that, which is just incredible. Everybody, if you're with us in the chat, do us a favor. Josh just brought this up too, but let us know what your experience with Fusion is, what your experience with CAD is, where you're at. The purpose of today's chat, I pitched this to the guys. I said, look, I'm a self-taught guy. I'm just like, I'm a hack. I've been trying to get by on what I need to like get the products that I want out into the world and created. And that's fine. But in the process, I've skipped over a ton of fundamentals, right? And you're going to like, if you don't cringe at some point or laugh at me for like the ridiculous ways that I've probably gone about doing things because I just never bothered to learn to walk before I run or fall down or crawl, like then you're not paying attention. I guarantee you it's going to be a little cringy when we're talking about the way that I've probably done things. So I compiled a list of my like top, I'm going to call it grievances, but I don't think it's fair to call it a grievance because it's just my ignorance in writing form. And
I totally disagree. I think that regardless of your level of expertise, that there is always going to be some degree of, well, I just missed that one basic thing. I've been using Fusion, or I've been using CAD for almost 10 years now, you know, every single day.
Right.
I will very often go back and watch Fusion 360 101, Fusion 360 fundamentals, basics.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee there's at least one tool that I go, how did I not know about this? How have I been dealing with all these workarounds when it's right there?
Isn't that wild? So, I feel like we come across stuff like that in our lives all day. I'm like, oh my God, I've been living my life like without knowing this for years.
Yeah.
Okay, so first order of business, I just want to test something. This is a new stream interface for the screen share component. So I'm going to click over on this different scene in OBS, and I want to make sure that you guys can see and hear us both when we are in this screen share view. You should be able to see Josh in the top. I apologize. There's some weird glitch where we have like kind of a redundant view in between us, and then I'm on the bottom here. You should be able to see Josh's mouse moving around and a basic Fusion view here. Is everybody see and hear that? And then Jake, say something. I probably called you Josh. I apologize. Jake, make sure you can hear him in this view too. Everybody good? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if we're happy.
Let's see if it's coming through.
A little housekeeping. It looks good from my end. And it looks good on this stream here. So there's just a little bit of a buffer. We'll wait for that to catch up. While we're waiting for that, we got a couple things here. Okay, good. Josh says, yep, they see it. Good. See and hear us. Perfect. Looks about right.
Fantastic.
Okay, so we're gonna try for that. I'm gonna go back to our little split screen view for just a second until we're ready to share some stuff, but that's some good housekeeping. Let's see. Our quality. Okay, let's see if I can turn up our quality. I'm gonna share. Let's see. Ethan here says he started with skipping and now can jog, but his level is still learning to really run. Yeah, I feel that, my friend. Mike from Never Let the Machines Win says, I like that your book is project-based. Want to do something like this? Here's how to do it. I agree. Yeah. I think that a great way to teach people something is to try to make it as relevant as possible to something that's practical for them or interesting to them to learn.
So every single project that we came across with every other type of learning CAD book, all the projects were just so boring, so uninteresting and unengaging. So every single project is 100% guaranteed interesting.
Guaranteed interesting. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
Every single project is something that you could make in your home workshop or on your 3D printer. So yeah, none of this, I'm going to make a pulley. No, everything is going to be really fun. So if you're a maker or an engineer or a roboticist or a hobbyist or anything like that, then we are of the same breed.
I mean, just to give you guys a little teaser, chapter 1, where you're talking about the one ring to rule them all. That's a very popular model. If you're into 3D printing, there's a lot of great little things that you can actually print out and like have.
Like the first project that we do is we recreate the Saturn V rocket that took men to the moon.
Yeah, I did. I skipped over.
And then we show you how to like pull an artificial reality viewer on your phone, like literally before you even get into chapter 1. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's in chapter 0. Fantastic.
Yeah. Those big wins right from the beginning is so important when you're learning a new software because it gives you that kind of fuel to the fire, you know?
Yeah, here you're modeling up a Lego. Okay, this is so relatable to us as all as makers. We all, worked on that stuff. So, or I'm sorry, a Lego compatible brick. Yeah.
Yeah, for legal purposes, not Lego, definitely just a plastic building block.
Call it, yes, whatever you want. But you guys, there's some really cool stuff. If you're into geocaching, like a lot of great stuff, threading. We could go on and on, but
that's not the point of this.
I won't do that. That's not the point. It's a fantastic resource. Check it out. Please support CAD Class. We love what they do, and it's great. So to jump in with my craziness, I made a little bullet point. I'm going to bring it up here. I'm not going to share it because it's just a bunch of gobbledygook. But we're going to just jump in on a couple things that I've noticed, and I'm going to ask you, and you can. This is in no particular order. These were just frustrations that I was dealing with, like as I was going through. One of the things I just want to bring up really quick, you guys do a weekly stream, and your partner, Josh, on Wednesdays, right? Like where you'll actually do this, and you're putting out a good amount of little short form content with tips and stuff as well. So make sure you're following CAD Class if you're into learning this stuff, because there's so many good little nuggets. One of the things I picked up last week that I should have known, again, probably a fundamental, is when you're in a sketch view, and we're going to show a sketch view, when objects are black, that means they're actually constrained and locked, and that's why you're not able to like move it, for example, as opposed to blue lines. I never knew that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes perfect sense. I mean, my knowledge of constraints is somewhat limited even to begin with, but that's kind of a fundamental building block of the whole system as well. So just great nuggets all around. Kudos to you guys. You ready to dive in here?
Let's do it, man.
All right,
Give
so
me the dirt.
one of the things I do a lot of 3D printed parts, and you probably realize like when we're done modeling up stuff, we love to put chamfers on things just so we don't get that sharp edge when we're printing it out. And it's probably the same if you're machining stuff too. It's nice to have just adding a little chamfer, a little fillet to something adds
it's
a
really
nice...
good for elephant's foot as well.
Yes, it adds some nice little refinement to the piece, a little quality feel, and it can help with the actual print properties. You're absolutely right. So I throw chamfers on everything almost by default.
Yeah.
When I start creating stuff with complex geometry, I'd been going through and, if it's something that's just a square, I'd be a click, click, click the 4 edges. I want to add the chamfer to, and then I say like add a millimeter of chamfer in both directions or whatever. Simple.
Yeah.
When I start getting into complicated geometry, sometimes there's like 37, 38 faces or whatever. And I'm like, this is really tedious. I'm just going click, 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 click. There has to be a better way.
Yes.
And I sometimes I'd notice like I can just click a face and it might chamfer, but it doesn't always work. Can you maybe show us how you would go about taking apart and not having to spend like 5 minutes clicking 700 edges?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So this is one of the first challenges that we do in our book. Very simple domino. It is super duper basic. Just a block with some pips that have been extruded, cut in there, and then added some fillets. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this fillet. Just we're starting out with like a super sharp block. Okay?
Yeah, we got sharp edge domino. We're going to cut ourselves on.
Exactly. So really good mindset of where you find tools. Basically, anytime that you're talking about fusion, you're either creating or modifying.
Right.
If you are going from a 2D sketch to a 3D object, that's going to be in the create window. If you already have something that's 3D and you want to change something about it, it's going to be in the modify menu. So if you want to add a fillet or a chamfer, you can find that in the modify section. So you're saying the chamfer. So it pulls up this little window that is actually slightly more complicated than it really needs to be. It's fairly simple.
I think that's a fair assessment of a lot of fusion stuff when it can feel overwhelming, right? There's like, wow, a lot of options here for something what I would consider basic.
But the idea is that every single thing that you can change or you need to change is in this little dialog box right here. So it's like, you can forget about the billion of other buttons. Just focus on this tiny little area.
Okay.
So with a chamfer, it's all about adding a little 45-degree angle to an edge. So I can go ahead and click on this edge. You can see it highlights in black. So I can go on there and I want to make this a 1 millimeter. Or I can click and drag this little arrow and I can change it. That's great. But what a lot of people run into is they go, okay, now I want to click on this edge, and nothing happens. So the trick is just like clicking on multiple files at a time, you hold down Control or Command, then you can click on other things. You can see it highlights in blue.
Right.
And then as soon as I let go of Control or Command, then it adds those things.
Okay.
The other nice thing is that not only can you click edges, you can also click on faces. Now, the faces, obviously, the back of this rectangle has 4 edges to it. So again, I can hold down Control, select this back face, and then as soon as I let go, it adds chamfers to all of the edges that are touching this. The other nice thing, so you can do edges, faces, you can also do entire bodies. So you can click and highlight an entire piece. If I just undo that really quick, you can click and highlight, and that selects everything on there.
Okay.
And then you can add a chamfer. So if I just say 0.5, really easy. That adds chamfer to every single.
Oh my gosh, that's so much faster.
Edge.
So it's the selecting of the entire body, and maybe it's even better. Maybe if there's probably times. So this is where you like your selection foo becomes critical, because maybe you're better off selecting the entire body and then deselecting the components that you don't want chamfered. So for example, the dots, maybe you don't want to chamfer the actual like parts of the dots. But as a speedy mechanism, you could select the whole body and then hold down Control and deselect. Okay, absolutely. all right. Okay, he can be taught.
If you want to go even more advanced, you can change your selection tool. So in the top right-hand corner, selection, so this window selection, which is like what everyone knows. You can also change this to a freeform, which is like the lasso tool in Photoshop, where you can draw just the top section and then add a chamfer to that.
Okay, so
So
here
you can
right
go-
away, I'm like, I didn't even know about that. That's
I
terrible.
know.
I've seen the lasso appear automatically sometimes, but I couldn't honestly tell you why.
People click it accidentally.
Okay.
They'll accidentally type 2, as you can see in the top corner. This changed to a lasso. To get back, you just type 1. So every single or most tools have numbers or letters next to them. So for example, fillet, not fillet. Fillet is F, move is M, etc., etc. Pre-built-in shortcuts.
A fillet of fish. You need a fish and add a fillet to a fillet of fish.
A fillet mignon.
A fillet mignon. Yes, that's a good thing. That'd be good organic modeling for future. So if you're just joining us, this is going to seem a little bit weird and disjointed because this is not a beginner thing. We're skipping over a ton of stuff. This is basically Pooch's random learnings or lack thereof. And I've already like, oh my God, I didn't even know about the select tool, which is just so rookie ball, right? Like, I mean, I knew how to select. I didn't even know about toggling the select. And I'm sure that's probably outlined in chapters. I'm totally vulnerable. I will be the first to admit that I'm an idiot on some of these things.
This is good, man. I couldn't do this. I wouldn't be able to go on a podcast and say, I don't know what I'm doing.
You know what? Self-deprecating humor is the best kind, or it's not even humor. It's just self-deprecating, really. I don't know. I'm hoping it's somewhat relatable because like I said, I think we all have these moments and we want to, poise ourselves as professionals at stuff. I'm not touting myself to be a CAD professional whatsoever. So I think the threat here is low potentially to me, but this is all fantastic stuff. Let's go on to a second bullet point. And this one, I think if you're doing 3D printing or you're getting into making and stuff, this is going to be relatable. Now we're probably getting into, I'll go back to our other screen here for a second. We're probably getting into something that maybe it's not the right tool for the right job, but you tell me. Here's the use case. I found a model. I found a mesh specifically that I want online, an STL, right? Yeah. So an STL, guys, if you don't know, you may or may not know, it's a mesh. It doesn't really come with it. It's a bunch of triangles, vertices, and points and stuff like that.
It's like a blanket over something.
It's a blanket.
It doesn't have any volume.
Yeah. So STLs are typically defined in that fashion. When we start getting into more complicated CAD stuff, we talk about step files and stuff. There's metadata stored that defines the geometry in a more meaningful way for a CAD package, right? So if I open up a step file or what are other native Fusion F360 and OBJ,
3MF.
Yeah. There's some more context in there that the CAD software can understand and help you manipulate better. For example, holes, right? There's holes in things and you can get a reading of a specific diameter or radius on a hole that you might not be able to get an easy read on with a mesh, right? Because it's been faceted.
Polygonized.
Yeah, it's been polygonized. Yeah, is that a word? I don't know. It sounds like polygamy. Yeah. But anyway, we deal in the world of STLs a lot of the time as doing 3D printing and stuff like that. And maybe we want to do a remix of something, but all we have is a mesh. And a lot of times, like, it can be a basic thing. Like, I just want to manipulate the mesh a little bit. I want to move a vertice or whatever. Is Fusion not, I'm just going to start with the fundamental question. Is Fusion not really ideal for that? Because historically I'd go into something like a mesh mixer or whatever, where I can kind of move
So yes and no. So I believe mesh mixer was actually recently discontinued.
Oh, it's been
mesh mix.
It's old.
Yeah. So mesh mixer was owned by Autodesk.
Yep.
As far as I know, I don't know if this is true or not. This is hearsay. Fusion 360 is absorbing mesh mixer. So as the name implies, for everyone that doesn't know, Fusion 360 is not just a CAD software, it's a fusion of a bunch of different types of CAD software. So it has different exploded diagrams, you can do simulations, you can do generative design. Later in our book we go into using it for CNCing and CAM work, photo rendering. It's got a bunch of little tiny things in there. you can pull in STLs into Fusion,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe it has like a soft limit of like 10,000 or 100,000 polygons.
Yeah.
Which for most models hits that limit pretty quick.
Right.
And so you could just think of it as, yes, technically, but it's really the wrong tool for the job. Mesh Mixer was really really fantastic because that was all it did. It's like, yeah, it can handle 1,000,000+ polygons just fine. So if you have any holes in it, you can patch that really easily.
Okay.
So Fusion is just not the right tool for the job, but if they include Mesh Mixer's capabilities into it, then it will be the place to go.
So we may see some enhancement here in the future. Let's just go with the assumption that we've got a fairly basic STL that say we just want to do some, you know, borderline manipulation. Do you have any like little tips and tricks for stuff like if I want to, you know, say I want to add a strut to something, like Booleans are things that happen oftentimes. But there's just like some little cleanup. So as an example, I had a model of a customized duct for my Prusa printer that I was trying to add a little like bulldozer blade to. And for the most part, it was fine. I was able to take in the STL and then do, you know, some Boolean, some combine. Actually, they call it combine inside Fusion.
Yeah,
I do know that. But there were like little bits where I was trying to say like extrude or do a push-pull operation on the existing mesh, and it just wasn't having it. And I'm like, I don't know if this is just because I'm trying to, you know, brute force the wrong tool here, or if I'm missing something about the mesh editing features, because there is a mesh mode.
Yeah. There is a mesh mode. But again, if you go over that polygon limit, it really starts to not like you very much.
Right.
So so I believe Fusion is a single core multi-thread program. So it can basically, so regardless, if you have a really tricked out computer, it'll operate just as fine as just like a normal computer. It's done that way on purpose, so you don't need to have a supercomputer to be able to use the software.
Okay.
And so it's fairly limited on how many polygons it can use. That's as far as I know.
Interesting.
If you want to bring it in as an STL, so I think one of the first projects that we do for this is we pull in this low poly skull project.
Yeah.
And then we make a little silicon mold, so you can tell exactly how much silicon you need if you're doing any mold making projects, and it's got all kinds of stuff. But we pull this in as an STL, and then we have to do something. Yeah, so if you pull it in, it should look just like this, where it technically doesn't have any volume. It's just got this shiny steel outside, but then it's got this kind of weird gold inside.
Incidentally, this is my actual skull right here that we were able to get from MRI data. It's very shiny. You'd be surprised how shiny my skull is. But I was willing to donate this for science and this part,
and we all thank you for this.
It was a non-destructive process, so
yeah.
Very fast.
Unfortunately, your lack of mouth kind of sucks.
Yeah, well, this is all just AI happening here, but you know, and you'd be surprised. You'd think that maybe it was decimated for the purposes of this, but no, my skull is just low poly to begin with.
Yeah,
because very basic.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So you were saying.
So when you bring this in as an STL, so if I just do a little section analysis, which is like going through the layers in Cura, you can see that it doesn't have any thickness. It's just like a blanket that you've laid over an object.
Exactly.
So the first thing we need to do is you can go into Mesh, go into, I believe, Create or Modify, something like that, and you can be looking for a B-rep.
Yeah.
So essentially, you can convert Mesh down here. So we've just changed the color, but now you can click on all these faces, and if you wanted to, you can extrude random faces. You can treat this just like a normal model. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So this is now a solid body. So if you guys that don't know, in Fusion 360, a 3D model or 3D object, we call that a body. So it's denoted, or sometimes as a component, by this this white cube or a white cylinder. So beforehand, you can't really click on faces at all. You can manipulate it in certain ways, but you can't do anything meaningful with a traditional CAD mindset. So this is the way that you can kind of manipulate it.
Okay, so now have you done something specifically where you actually said convert to B, so it's B
Yeah,
rep, it's not brep, it's okay, so it's a B rep.
Yeah.
And what did you do to get that view of all those little facets?
Yeah, convert mesh right here. I believe the tool was called B rep. They changed it to convert mesh.
Yeah, there we go with the ever change. Okay, so we've converted the mesh. So it's not called a B rep anymore. It's a converted mesh, or it's whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now we've got our series of facets. So I saw you were able to take a facet and say extrude it. That's very handy. Are you able
you can treat it just like any body.
Are you able to manipulate the vertices?
Yeah. If you want to put a fillet on there for whatever reason, yeah, do it.
Whoa, cool. How about so say I'm just trying to like adjust the round of it a little bit, where I need it to look a little bit more bulbous to make it look like I have a bigger brain inside.
That's a good one.
I'm gonna give you a stumper, maybe. I don't know.
So I don't know. I think that may fall into Fusion is the wrong program for that.
Okay.
I would probably do that. So that's more of like an artistic manipulation.
Yeah.
So I would probably do that in Blender.
Yep.
Again, pretty easy to use, but if you're doing something more dimensional or...
So if we're getting into the world of organics more, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was saying a vertices, I was wondering if, like, can you grab a point? So for example, I saw you grab a facet, a triangle, and actually extrude it. Can you grab a point and actually put a move operation on it to make a horn or something like that? You can do that.
Yeah.
So you could. I mean, it would be. Is it fixed? Yeah.
Yeah. So moving it around in the space is fine.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to edit something about that, I would probably do that in the surface editor, where you could treat it like a form, and then you could actually manipulate all the individual faces and make it.
That's what I was getting at. Okay, so there is a view. Yeah. So you're in the mesh. So like I was saying, if you could just grab I was hoping like you could demonstrate if you could grab just like one of the points.
I don't have a ton of experience with this.
See? Haha! I got into the stumper mode. Well, okay. So
this is for yeah. So we are going to be touching on this potentially. A few of our students have asked us for an advanced Mastering Fusion 360, so this is something that we'll be touching on in that book.
All right. Ooh, all right.
But this is how you would create things totally organic. So people that want to make like Xbox controllers, where it's like, yeah, you need it to be symmetric, but you want it to be organic and obviously comfortable to hold. The form and all the patch tools and surface modeling and T-splines, that's where you'd use those tools.
I see. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, we'll have to save that for another time when we're ready to tease that content. All right, let's move on to another thing. So let's talk for about a moment. This is more of a workflow question for you. So on the left-hand side of Fusion there, you've got your little browser menu that defines all of the various components and bodies and sketches and whatnot. I find when I'm modeling up more complicated things, there's times where I'll have multiple bodies, multiple components, and I'm putting together an assembly, right? Because it's like I want to see how the whole thing fits together. But then I want to just start kicking out meshes of individual components. And the default action that I've found when I have a multi component assembly is if I export a mesh or whatever, the default, it doesn't retain the revision or the version of the model the way that the root component does. So for example, at the very top, I'm having a hard time reading that. Let me see if I can see it in this view. I think it says V2 for your geocache thing at the very top, right? So if you were to just kick out that entire thing as a mesh, by default, it will retain the version. And every time you make a change and save it, it will auto index to version 3, version 4.
This is more, so technically, so this is a project that's made up of a couple different bodies. I'm actually not going to use this as an example. I'm going to change this over to a project or an assembly that uses different components. I'm going to go into our assemblies. Let's go into the fire piston.
Okay.
So each one of these, or if we go into the assembly of our fire piston, for you guys that don't know, this is the tool where basically just a piston, smash it, put a little bit of tinder on it, huge increase in pressure, huge increase in temperature, and you can actually use compressed air to start a fire for camping or survival or anything
Those
like
are
that.
fun. Yeah.
Super cool. So this is one of the projects that we make with this. So this assembly, as you can see, it says fire piston assembly V11. So this is how many revisions that we've gone through this.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be exporting this as a Fusion file, I would actually recommend sharing this instead of exporting it. You would normally export individual components, but you would normally just share the assembly between a friend. Yeah. So if I wanted to email this file to you, one of the things that I would do is go into File. Ooh, that doesn't want to open. You can go File, Share, and you can actually send someone the link of this. So you have an online library of all of your projects as well. A lot of people don't know this. So you can so every single project that you make has a URL. You can just email someone the URL because it's a super tiny file size. You can allow them to download it, and then it just takes no time at all. Then they just open it up on the Fusion account.
I never thought to do it that way. This is exactly right. So, you guys, there's a little bit of a bug where the screen share won't show his drop-down menu, but if you go File, Share, there's a link, Autodesk Gallery, GrabCAD. You can actually share to GrabCAD even directly from here. And so what a handy way to go about it. And then it'll retain. So I guess the other thing to point out then is I can see you have some linked components. So this is where workflow gets interesting to me, because there's not a requirement, and perhaps when I'm getting started with putting my assemblies together, I would be better off modeling each of the components individually, or
no.
Or how do you do the link? How do you go about deciding how to link subcomponents and all that workflow?
So in the world of Fusion 360, you have two main different types of components. You have internal and you have external. Okay. If I'm working with a project that only has a handful of components, maybe say a dozen or less, then you can decide to make them internal, which means all of them are held inside just one file. So, we're both 3D printing nerds. So this is our Ender 3 hot end project.
Okay.
So every single sketch and body, component, appearance, canvas, decal, all of the information is held inside this assembly file.
Right. And that's
really nice.
That's how I've built historically. Okay. So
yeah.
Okay.
So if I want to edit, if I want to work on the heating element or the heat break or the heat sink, I can then activate, and now you can see my timeline has changed, and I'm just working on that one component. The rest of the components are ghosted out because I can now work in reference to those other ones.
Okay.
So that's really handy for an assembly. I believe this is what's available for the free version of Fusion 360. So super duper handy.
Right.
If I don't want to see these, I can just hide all the other components.
Right.
Or I can isolate it, yada, yada. That's really nice.
Okay.
But if I'm working on a gigantic project, hundreds of components.
Yeah.
Or I'm working in a team of people. If I'm working on a robotics project, and each individual, I've got a gigantic assembly that really doesn't want to update across, 10 different users. I just want to work on this one component. Then you can say, all right, I'm going to make a new component, but I'm going to set it as external. That means all of the components information is now held outside in one of these folders. So just for an example, maybe not the best example, but we have our hot end right here. This is an internal component.
Yep. And
then our fire piston is an external component. So basically just this assembly file it's pretty small. It's really, really small. It's just referencing all of the information. This is where all the meat is. It's just pulling all of them, joining them together, and displaying it. That's it.
Okay. All right.
So I can click on these and open them up as individual files. Now you can see it's, none of the mess. There's no more other components that are kind of, messing at my view. My timeline is really short. This is really easy to work with. But it just means, it just has the added stress of, all right, you now have to make sure that you save everything to a folder and everything is really nice and organized. And in here, you can also see you've got all your versions. So you can go through and you can see all my different versions. You can tag some of them as like this is the really important one.
Yeah.
This is the milestone.
Yeah.
So you have a little bit more usability to it.
Okay, so if you go back to the main assembly file, that's what the little link. Sorry, for the fire piston.
Oh, whoops. Yeah.
That's what that little link chain link thing references the fact that it's linking to. So that means if an update is pushed to that file, you'll get a little notification, and it'll ask you if you want to refresh and update.
Absolutely. So if
right?
So I've got a little chamfer on the outside of here. So if I change this to 0.4,
yeah,
then I can save this file.
A little more chamfy. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, a little bit more chamfy.
Right.
I can then go back to my fire piston. You'll see, yeah, I've got like a little warning saying a component is out of date.
Right.
Something isn't right.
Right.
In fact, if you go over to your data panel, you can see my little J icon, which means it is open right now. So that's what is being edited.
Right.
So I can just click this, update it, and now it's done.
Look at that.
So now if I pull out, oops, it'll let me. I'm just gonna hide everything else. That's fine. So now you can see my chamfer is now updated. It's now the most recent version.
Beautiful.
Pulled in.
So I can see how this would be handy, especially if you're on a team where somebody else is doing stuff and you don't have to. And so in here we have all the alignment data, positioning data is stored inside of here. So the orientation and all of that stuff, that makes perfect sense to me. The versioning on your linked components there also appear to update with whatever you just pulled in, right? So when you saved that, we ended up with a new. So that means that if I kick out a mesh from here, it should get. So what I'm talking about, if you right click on any of those components and you go save as mesh, you by default it will reference. Well, if you do it for the body, that's interesting. So go ahead and say, okay, what will it want to call it? Because I know you can title it, and I don't want to call it whatever you have it labeled.
Body one.
Right, but if you were to do it at the component level, it would actually retain the revision control or the revision tag as well. There we go.
Yeah.
So what I was getting at is when you're doing a model like your first example with the internal components, if you make a change to the component, you don't get revision history information about the changes to a specific subcomponent the same way that you do with what you've got here. Is that right?
It starts to get a little muddled because you can essentially align relationships between multiple components. So you can say, hey, when I change the hole diameter on this component, the one just below it also is affected.
Right.
So it's now, well, is this one's version changed? Are both of them changed? It gets a little it's a little bit more fluid. So if you're making a product where things are going to be changing all the time, things may be changing because you 3D printed a prototype and this really needs to be altered and it's flowing into other components, then internal components are rad. But if you're working in a team where things need to be super duper organized, and it needs to be just a little bit more, the information needs to be spread out, or it's a little bit easier to understand, then you want to go for the external components. But they both have the same functionality. They both do the same thing. It is purely personal preference.
Okay, so it's you kind of have to have some understanding. See, unfortunately, it's like I can never quite tell what the project's going to evolve into. So it's like if I have the benefit of knowing that from the jump, I might strategize the workflow and the organization a certain way. My next question is it possible once we've set up an assembly like this to break it into discrete components? So can we take internal stuff and make them external?
Not as far as I know. It's pretty locked in place.
Okay, so once we go down this road,
you can convert the bodies into components, but you aren't able to change the component format. So it's a little locked in place.
Okay, and then if we do that, we don't retain the timeline history either, do we? Because because I could take it and I could export it and then create a new file from that, but then I lose design history. Yes. Yeah. So that's not optimal.
When you're constantly exporting and then pulling back in and back and forth, you're always going to be losing some information.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is a case where you kind of want to do a little bit of planning, a little bit of organizing ahead of time will potentially go a long way.
Yeah.
But it's not to say that you can't come up with a workable solution.
No.
Yeah. So
usually, yeah, that's the idea. If I'm working on a team with multiple people, or if I know that my project is going to have hundred or thousands of components, then external is probably the way to go.
Got it.
But you can organize this as as neatly or as disorganized as you want. If you want to have in different sub assemblies and different categories, go for it. Go wild.
I think where I get a little bit lost is that when I'm making changes to specific subcomponents and stuff, and in the case of this, where it's like it's retaining revisions at the root level, it's like, yes, I can go back and I can change the revisions and stuff, but I feel like I lose context of like what revision a specific component was on. That I don't feel like I have in the same way. When I use externals, it's more clear to me like, oh, that's right, I have updates that I made to the linchpin or whatever other component.
Yeah, it's like you can see the if you go back into the assembly file, you can see all the revisions of the entire assembly,
right,
as one unit,
right,
but not of all of the individual components.
I lose context of like, well, is there a better way? Then my question is there a better way to, like, because a lot of times it's like a month or two has gone by before I come back, and so like, what's the best way to retain like change log information? Like, wait, what did I even change in this revision?
So you can add notes to any of this. You can add annotations if you want. I believe within Fusion 360 on the online place, you can actually build in huge spreadsheets and huge flowcharts between project management. Where is it on the timeline? So there is huge functionality for that. Most of the time, I'm not working with a big team. I'm just working by myself.
Yeah.
If
but
I'm doing
tools,
any robotics
fantastic.
work.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's super helpful, man. Thank you. I feel like I'm just, man, getting universe brained by you here left and right. Okay.
Give me some more.
Yeah, next one. Default rotation, origin point on move. Okay, so I feel like when you try to implement a move operation in different contexts within Fusion, whether you're in a sketch, whether you're in working with a body or a component, what it picks as its default origin point for the move feels arbitrary sometimes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So the move command is a little funky, especially in assemblies, because you can select exactly where that move location is, but it's really depending on your project. That kind of pulls into a little bit more of the CAD philosophy, where you need to then build up a skill set to be comfortable to know exactly where you model things, on what plane, in what orientation, so that it will help you later, down the project. If you know that the project that you're making is symmetric, then you need to pick which plane makes the most sense and which orientation makes the most sense.
Okay. So again, a little planning can go a long way here. So I don't know if you can do a quick demonstration of a move operation.
Absolutely.
And I know we can, I know you can change the point, or sometimes it feels like you can. Sometimes it seems harder than others. And again, I guess I'm more curious is like, what is the program? Like, cause whoever programmed it had to come up with like, there was a decision tree happening, like, okay, the origin is here by default. And I'm just always curious, like, why is it there? It doesn't seem to make any sense.
I think it may be the center of mass. I think that's
the center of mass. Wow, that I would not have guessed.
Or the center of the center of the volume.
The volumetric center? Sure.
Yeah,
I think that's chewy center of the whole thing.
Of the delicious center.
It's where the maximum deliciousness is in the.
It's the nougat center of mass.
The nougaty. Yeah, we're creating new context here. It's the origin of nougat for the thing. Cool. Okay. All right. What do we got here? A pizza cutter?
We got a pizza cutter. Yeah.
Very practical. I love it.
Thank you. This is actually one of the projects that I was like, oh yeah, I really want to make this. I don't have a pizza. The problem with being a maker, especially having access to really nice tools, is that your gut reaction is, I'm just gonna make it.
Yeah. I know.
When other people go, why don't you just buy it? It costs $5 at IKEA. I'm like,
because I can make
oh
it.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's not even I can make it. It's, oh yeah, that's right.
That's right. That's true. It's the plight of the maker, right? We just like when you see when you all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail. Like you just want to nail everything.
I think it's the plight of our partners. They go, I really want a bookcase, and I go, all right, well, I need to go to the lumberyard. They go, no.
Lumberyard. We're gonna get some.
Let's just go to Target. Let's go to Target.
No, not what I meant.
And they go, no, I'm out the door. Let me grab my keys. I'm gone.
That's funny. Okay, all right, we're gonna move this. We're gonna do a manipulation on this pizza cutter.
All right. So this is a 3D object. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's a little thumbtack over here. So this is our grounded component. So all of these components have joints between each other. So if I try and click and drag on any of them, they don't move. The wheel has got a revolute joint, but it's not going to be moving locationally throughout the universe. Everything's locked in place.
Right.
So I can actually right-click on a grounded component and click unground. And now it can move anywhere I want.
Ungrounded.
I still have revolute control, but now that I try and click and move it, it's like, well, spinning from what context? It's like everything is moving.
Right.
So if I wanted to move something, then I can type M for move, and then it's going to say, all right, what is the object that you're trying to move? You're trying to move a body, a component. Let's say I want to move the components. Okay. It's going to say, all right, which components? I want to move the end cap. So yeah, you can see this little white dot. This is the center of mass that is going to move.
The nougaty center, chewy nougaty center.
The delicious nougaty center. Yeah.
So I can. Okay, good.
So I can move it left, right, up and down. I can change the pitch, the yaw, the third one that everyone forgets. But I also have a ton of tools up here where I can say, yeah, I just want to translate it. I want to be able to move it in all different dimensions. Just rotate. Point to point is usually the one that I go for most often. Because this outer surface is curved, there is no point where I can click on it. So there is no origin point. If I just click on any of it, but then you can say the target point should be the origin. Put it on the origin. The clicking point. So then it's going to snap to that location. That's the one that I use most often.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And of course, when you're moving just the end cap, because there's a joint constraint where the end cap is on there, it's just bringing everything with it. So if you wanted to just pull the end cap off, you would have to remove that joinery, and then you should be able to just manipulate the other thing. But that's really helpful. The center of mass just didn't even occur to me. I'm like, why is it there? Very cool. It
also really confuses people about the. Do you see that little green dot in the very center of the handle when I orbit it?
Yeah.
Right in the wooden handle. So that is the orbit center. That's right. That's the center of mass of the entire object. And I can change it. I can right click anywhere in the universe. I can say, set the orbit center to the end cap. So now when I orbit, that's now the center of my
guys.
universe.
Did you know that? Be honest. Be honest if you didn't know that in the chat. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and you saw the YouTube short, then you absolutely know that at all.
Look at that. I love that. That's very cool.
And I can...
We got a question
in the center of mass.
Speaking of chat, we got a question from Ethan in the chat. He goes, why is it that sometimes Fusion will ask if we want to capture a position when we do certain functions?
That's a really good thing. Okay, so if I want to, if I'm building, and let's say this is what the end product is going to look like. Let's say I haven't put on this last joint. So this is where it was made in the Fusion universe.
Right.
But I want to edit something about this. If I try and edit this piece right now, if I want to edit that in place, it's going to say, yeah, that's fine. And I can change something about it. I can extrude that face if I want, for example. And that's fine because nothing about this component is affected by that component. If I try and move it out of the way, you can now see I've got some new tools up here.
Yeah.
So if I want to then edit this, it's now saying, whoa, wait, you just moved something. Yep. Do you want that? Because now all of the changes that you do, because you're in the assembly, is in reference to everything else. Do you want to capture? Do you want to say that that movement was important? Or do you want to revert it and then it goes back to where it was? Then you can continue onwards.
Okay.
So it's just constantly asking you, saying the moving around is very often actually not what you wanted to do. It's just to move things out of the way, so then you can kind of see what's going on.
Right.
So it's now asking you, saying, is that moving away? Is that just because you wanted to see something, or is that now an important location that you've moved it to? That's the idea.
Why does that matter? I guess like it's just a question if you want to, because I do notice when you do capture that position, it will throw something in your timeline where you can see that it's something has moved.
That position is now
logging.
captured.
It's logging that. It's interesting. I'm with Ethan where it's like I'm not sure why that distinct. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. Where it's like a lot of times I'm just moving stuff around so I can better see it, or if I'm hiding things, same way. But I would think that if I'm moving something to where like the location is particularly important, usually that's in tune with doing a join or in a line or something like that.
Not necessarily. So I'll give you a good example.
Yeah, please.
So this pizza cutter, this is in chapter 7 where we go for joints. The other project is a Tesla turbine. Do you know what a Tesla turbine is?
No, maybe remind me.
No?
I feel.
Do you know who Nikola Tesla is?
Oh, certainly know who Nikola Tesla is. He made a lot of interesting inventions, but what's the turbine?
he made a type of turbine. Normally they have blades. This is a bladeless turbine, and it is essentially made up of a bunch of parallel discs that you can then blast air through or blast steam through, and it just through the surface friction it will spin. It spins at ridiculously high RPMs.
Yeah.
But the really groovy thing about it is that it requires no maintenance. So there are Tesla turbines that have been running since he built it in the 1900s, like 1920 or whatever, that are still running to this day with no maintenance whatsoever.
He made all kinds of wild stuff. I mean, I know he's like most noted for like the Tesla coil and like the induction motor and stuff like that. But there was doesn't he have like a one-way valve, the Tesla valve? Yeah, there's like all kinds of crazy stuff. I hadn't actually seen the turbine. That's cool, but I do love no maintenance. I would love if more things in my life had no maintenance.
The downside of this is that it really doesn't produce that much power. It spins at like ridiculously high RPM.
So it's worthless.
He's like, well,
but
when he made it, he's like, there's this like with the material, the technology of my day. This is useless. But he's like, but I'm going to patent it and I'm going to save all of my math and all my science. And maybe in the future when material physics change, then maybe it'll be useful. I think to this day, we're still not. Still not super useful.
We still haven't figured out the actual use case. It's amazing when the invention exists before the need or the use, right?
Yeah. For my senior thesis, when I was getting my bachelor in engineering, I built a couple of these. My thesis was making a steam engine on Mars that uses the atmospheric dust as fuel to then run a boiler to then run these. And the idea is that if you're 4 million miles away from Earth, you need to have something that lasts. And so if you have a turbine that's constantly breaking down, not really going to work. So you need to have something like this.
We gotta
run for centuries.
I feel like we should collect these as like just like manna from heaven. Mike said I did not know that. I think he was in reference to maybe our orbiting or whatever. But like the idea and there should be something where it's just like you need to take those and put them in your pocket. And the more people say I didn't know that, you're like that's a win for you. You just educated somebody. That's just a tasty morsel of nougaty goodness.
Coming back to this,
So
the reason I brought it up is that there's an inside and there's an outside to this. So you can model this and add joints and add screws and all these different components to it.
Right.
But I didn't want to constantly hide, and show all of these components. It's actually more comfortable to make all of these components over here. And make all these components over here. So it's like, moving this out there is not just temporary. Just, hey, move it out of the way real quick. This is an actual important location that I can work on this. So so when I moved it, it's saying, do you want to capture that position? Yeah, I do. Move it. That's an important decision that I move this over there. And then later down the line, as soon as I'm done with this component, I can pull it back inside this component. So
and you can always move it back. So I see what you're saying. Yeah, very cool. Okay. That is super handy, man. We're learning. We're going beyond. Okay. How are you on time? Because I know like there's more stuff
I'm
here,
good to
but
go,
we
man.
don't have to do them all today. We talked about, let's see. Oh, I think this is a good one, and I don't know. Again, maybe with the way my mind works, there might not be a tool for it. I gotta congratulate you first of all because I'm totally putting you on the spot. I mean, I shared this
That's
list with
fun,
you
man.
ahead of time, but like we didn't really take time to like have me explain
Did
any
you
of
want me
it.
to read it? Ugh,
No,
no.
no, no, no.
Ooh.
So here's a good one, and maybe this is relatable to you guys, but oftentimes when I'm iterating on something, um,
Mhm.
we're constantly putting holes in things, right? For various
Yeah.
purposes. And especially when I'm 3D printing, no two printers are necessarily calibrated the same way. Holes kind of, plus minus depending on the quality of the printer or just the decisions that it makes and what slicer you're using, all kinds of stuff. But oftentimes, instead of like making a change, saving the mesh, slicing it up, printing it out, I'll just say like create an array of say 10 different holes of varying diameters,
Mm.
print it out at once and say which hole is best for the fitment of whatever application, whether I'm trying to put
Hmm.
a pin or a screw or a bearing or whatever in there. Um, is there a quick and easy dirty hack for maybe programmatically just getting it to give me an array of 10 holes with just a slight variance here and there, or do I have to go in and adjust each diameter along the way?
So I believe that you do have to go in and adjust all of them.
Okay.
Just with the basic fusion, you can add in parameters, so it's like all of them are the same size, and when you update one, all the rest of them
But the first
change.
time, okay, yeah.
But the first time that you do it, what may exist, and I don't know if this is I'm actually almost positive this exists, is that you can actually link a spreadsheet into some dimensions. So one thing you can do is if you have either Google Sheets or Excel, and you can have all of these really quick 20, 100, 1,000 dimensions that change based on a formula.
Yeah.
You can then link that to all these dimensions in Fusion, and it will just auto-populate. It will pull that information externally and then put it into Fusion.
That's
I've never used
incredibly
anything like that.
powerful. Yeah.
I've used it for SolidWorks back in
Okay.
the day.
Okay.
I haven't used it for Fusion, but it's one of those things that I'm almost positive exists.
Okay. So where I started with this was I was using like the pattern tool or the is that what it's called? It's under
Yeah,
create.
yeah.
So I know very quickly like I can spit out a number of holes. So instead of having to draw each
Mhm,
hole and locate, like I can very easily do that. That's pretty standard stuff, I think,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But the current interface for creating, well, and the other thing that I've noticed too is like, so if I open up a sketch and I create a sketch of a number of holes,
Mhm.
um, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it would throw a little piece of iconography on the sketch where I could click on it in the sketch to go back and change my patterning, but I was
Yeah,
expecting it in the
absolutely.
timeline. Do you know
So
what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So let's go into our AI villain, which is for legal purposes absolutely not HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Totally not.
Um,
Totally different, guys.
Definitely not. No, no, no. No. So we've got a row of bolts all the way down the side, and
Perfect. Yeah.
this is a sketch that we've extruded some holes into it.
Yep.
Actually, no. This is actually a pattern from the hole tool, where we've added a bunch of holes in there. So anytime you're looking at a pattern or anything like that, when you go into the sketch workspace, this is going to be adding up a little icon in the same way that it does this for if you're adding any constraints. If you want to see tangent or horizontal,
Yep.
it's going to be adding all these icons on there. You can click them and delete them. It will also put that up there for the rectangular or the circular pattern. You can go in there and change it. So I'm actually not going to show you this. I'm actually going to go to our involute gear that we make. It's a personal favorite of mine. Actually, no, I totally lied. That's also 3D. Do we have any 2D patterns in here? I'm sure we do.
It'd probably be easy to sketch something up from scratch really quickly, but that's fine. I think what I'm getting at though is like I don't understand the law, given that I don't know. In the times that I've created patterns, I find that like I'm messing around with like, you know what? I actually wanted 5 holes over this spacing, not this, and for it to not
So this little
exist
icon
in the
right there.
timeline, so that if I want to go back and edit it, like I'm just curious to why you suppose they use that like constraint iconography instead of a explicit feature in the timeline.
So that's because the timeline is basically built up of features.
Mm.
So if I want to make a cube with a hole and rounded corners,
Mm-hmm.
then it means you started off with a sketch of a square.
Right.
You then extruded it to a cube, then you added features to it, and then drill the hole through. Right. So all those are individual features. Whatever you do inside the sketch is only represented by this one feature.
Sketch itself.
Because then someone may go, yeah, we should add rectangular pattern in here, and then someone goes, well, then I want to add the dimension in the timeline as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to, and then it builds very quickly. Then you go, oh gosh, if I just want to make a semi-complicated sketch, my timeline is now unearthly long.
I see.
So some of the things are timelineable and some of them are not. These aren't features, therefore they're not in the timeline.
Okay, but if you wanted to edit that, you still can by actually double-clicking on that little pattern icon there, and you can go back and now manipulate without having to recreate. So what's interesting was, for some reason, and maybe this is a future, if the Fusion people are listening, like, to me, I was like, oh, how tricked out would it be if in that dialogue you just had up, it was like, here, now array these, because I feel like I've used other tools like Lightburn or whatever, where it's like, I can very quickly manipulate that array where it's like, here, add increasing diameter to the pattern, or, put some parametric variability in it. It just doesn't currently exist this way, but like you're showing, you can manually dimension each of those and then go back and change the parametric function where it's like it could be this times point, add a percent to each hole. You would just have to do it the first time.
It's one of those things where you could do it in the slicer as well. In Cura, I know there's hole detectors and you can adjust that pretty easily.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
So you can do it in lots and lots of different places.
Interesting. Thank you for the discussion on that, because like I said, there's no one right or wrong way. There's a million different ways to get it. And I know also there's, I'm used to sketching a hole, but the whole tool inside of Fusion itself is more powerful in certain ways for manipulating things when it comes to threading and other stuff as well. So you don't necessarily have to just manually model each of these holes. Sometimes giving context that it is an actual hole is useful as well, which which is a whole nother thing. Pun intended. Excellent. Is there a way to, here's the next question. Let's see, hold on. What was I getting at with this? Is there a way to shortcut a variant or default to a different form of circle or square sketch? Oh, yeah. So I'm in a sketch tool. And I want to draw a circle, or I want to draw a rectangle. And we've seen on multiple dialogues, if you see the dialog box for where you're starting to create a circle or a square, you've jumped over it. But click on that so you get the dialog box for creating a rectangle, for example.
Oh, for some reason it doesn't want to pop up.
Of course,
but it will for all the other ones.
Of course, it doesn't.
Funky. God, I love streaming.
It's not showing us and that's just something because of the stream. The dialog box won't show. Well, that's not going to work for illustrating then. You're going to have to use your imagination for a second. If you guys have done Fusion before, you know this and stuff. But there are choices for multiple types of circle and square. Center is center origin square, a center origin circle, a 2-point circle, a 3-point circle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen I love keyboard shortcuts from my developer days. It saves a ton of time in the aggregate over your course of, using something to be able to just like, hey, push C for circle, or, R for rectangle, or whatever it is. And you can change those things. But I've noticed there's multiple times where I want to shortcut the specific type of rectangle. And does it allow me to do that?
Absolutely. So for some reason, the modify menu is working just fine. But I want to so you can see the trim tool has a shortcut right there. Let it T.
Yeah.
But we don't have one for extend.
No.
So let's add something. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So there's these 3 little dots right here, just to the right of it.
Okay.
When you click that, you can say, I want to pin it to the toolbar just above. I want to pin it to a shortcut, or I want to change a shortcut. So let's say I want to add, well, E is taken by extrude. So if I type E, it's going to say, yeah, no, that already exists somewhere. So let's say I want it to be Shift E.
Okay.
And then I click OK.
Okay.
And then if you go back, you can see.
Oh, look at that. We've just made our own shortcut. Okay.
We just made a shortcut.
Fantastic.
Super duper easy.
Now the next question then is, when an object like a rectangle, so I don't know if you're able to see on your side, has parameters inside of its own dialog for the type of rectangle, can I shortcut different types of rectangle? Okay, so how would I do that?
In the exact same way. So every single tool that you have will always have these little 3 dots next to them, and you can add shortcuts in the exact same way to any tools. Regardless of sketch, 3D, rendering, cam, doesn't matter. You can add as many shortcuts as you'd like to anything.
Okay, so maybe I'm just not asking this well, but like when I go to, you know what? Why is my dialogue not showing up? My sketch dialogue is not showing up either. It must have something to do with the fact that we're streaming. I think we should move on. There in the actual dialogue for a rectangle, there's a point where you can choose whether the origin of the rectangle you're drawing is at the center, or you're doing a 2-point rectangle or a 3-point rectangle. And that was the parameter that I was trying to say, like, can we change? But when I push R for rectangle, it always defaults to it.
Are you saying right there?
2-point that's the one. Yeah, now I can see it, the sketch palette, right?
Yeah,
so now if I want center rectangle to be my default, I have to manually change that. There doesn't seem to be a way to shortcut. I want my default to always be center rectangles.
Oh yeah, then you just change. Then you just make the center rectangle shortcut R and make a 2-point rectangle Shift R.
Oh, so when I'm actually creating and you're right, it is broken out under the wing out menu. I see what you're saying now. Yep, got it.
And side note, this sketch palette, I very, very, very rarely use any of the features in here. It just takes up a lot more screen real estate, so you can just click and drag it, pull it off to the side, and then minimize it, get out of the way. I think there's only one tool that I use in there when I'm in the 3D world, and that is Slice. Basically does like a section analysis where it cuts the face you're working on. Other than that, you guys can hide it, get it out of the way. It just takes up room.
See, now this is an interesting workflow thing, because I'm looking now at the create menu when I'm in my sketch view. So if you were to just do click the create and go to rectangle, and very rarely do I actually go. I'm usually, because I'm already hitting the R shortcut for rectangle. I didn't even think that I could just go and add in this menu, because I'm not going to explicitly select in the menu to do that. I'm always going R, and then I'm toggling over in that sketch palette. So this is just, again, my habits of working in a certain way, getting in my own way.
Learning together.
To the song. Fantastic. There you go. Simple. I knew they're always simple. The last thing I have on here was something that I constantly get frustrated about. I'm sure I'm just doing something stupid, but you have a sketch where you have multiple lines potentially overlapping one another.
Yeah.
How do I pick which line if there's multiple lines overlapping each other that I want to like trim or delete or manipulate?
The headline is "Don't do that."
Do not draw lines on top of lines, Pooch. That's the answer.
Don't do it. Okay, so you can technically draw a line over a line. Can you see it's ever so slightly thicker?
Yeah.
Like by a hair.
Yeah.
This is just, it's bad form.
Yeah.
It's just the one thing that you go, don't do it.
Well,
technically,
in my defense, let me just say something really quick. The times these seem to come up is in the context where I'm actually pulling a DXF file in from another place, where there's just a bad import happening, or there's redundant geometry, or it's doing something weird where it's trying to like apply a line weight, something like that. But it is possible to sketch it up like this. So I say don't do it. If it does happen, is there actually a way? Are you just going to have to kind of click and move? I don't know.
Yeah, kinda. So I do see some people, if I just add on collinear constraint to these. So in this scenario, we have kind of a rectangle.
Yeah.
And on the very top, we've got 2 lines that overlap each other.
Yep, there it is.
Sorry, need to make that. There we go. All right, so this is just one of those scenarios where you just want to avoid it as much as possible, and this is where we can use our friend the extend tool. So in this scenario, I actually want to delete one of those lines, and then because we just made that shortcut, Shift E, I can just extend that line to that corner.
What? Oh my gosh.
What?
I didn't even know about the extend tool, guys. Look at this.
Yeah.
And I saw when you were selecting it too, it was actually did a really good job of like giving you some contextual like highlight of the oh, look at that. Oh my god.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the inverse, you can then break all of these. So you can then cut that. And so now these are two individual lines.
And that was via the extend tool as well, or was that a trim?
And then that's the break tool.
The break tool, that's different from
breaking a line.
Okay. And it put the break at the intersection, so it automatically saw like, okay, I get an idea of what you're doing here.
This is one line. I want to break that line at this point. Cool. Now these are two separate lines.
Here's another thing I just wish I knew a long time ago. This has been incredibly useful, Jake. I can't begin to thank you enough. I know that this is an odd way to go about like learning things for people because this is so customized to just my wackiness of how I've gone about doing.
I kind of love it though, because there's totally scenarios where I go, I don't know.
It's a weird insight into like people's minds of like how they operate and what they're accustomed to or what they're not accustomed to or what they've experienced.
I mean, like some of these scenarios that you're telling me about, it's like, yeah, this is either like an explicit feature on Fusion, and sometimes it's just your style. And maybe your style maybe isn't the most
just like, Push, you're weird, man. You're just stop being so weird.
Just stop. God.
You know, a little side note about this too. What's interesting to me about Fusion is it's like it's very clear that it wants to help. It's like it's trying to make some educated guesses based on what you're doing, and sometimes that's really useful, and other times it's really frustrating where it's like, I don't want to do that. Like, why do you keep trying to snap to this or, you know, apply these things? And until you kind of like again, there's so many different ways to skin a cat. Terrible turn of speech. I have no idea why that's a thing, but you know what I mean. There's
probably medieval. It's probably weird like that.
It's totally medieval. But there's a million different ways to go about doing the same thing. And obviously the developers that came up with Fusion, you know, and this is, we're getting into the world of like UX design and what's intuitive and what's not intuitive. Very debatable stuff. But really powerful and interesting stuff that can either save you a lot of time or cost you a lot of time because you're just not doing it right. And learning the nuance of those things just takes some time and experience to get there, or, you know, just actually learning a proper workflow like you might see inside of Mastering Fusion 360, ladies and gentlemen.
That was a good plug.
Thank you. Did you like how smoothly I just rolled into that?
Super smooth. You're a professional.
I don't know about that, but, you know, I dabble. Let's toggle back here just to our lovely faces and do a little wrap up. Again, I want to thank you for your time today. This was just so awesome. I am so humbled and gracious for you to just take the time out of your day to do this. I really love this kind of thing because I think it's just, it humanizes the process. I really would encourage you, you know, maybe we can get you in touch with some other creators and it just gives a great little insight into their minds, and you can just ask, you know, answer a couple little, you know, 1, 2, or 3 frustrations. And I think it'd be great content. I don't know. Let us know in the chat if you found this useful, if you learned something new today. We, you know, certainly appreciate the interaction that we've had. And we appreciate the support of the channel. Thank you for everybody that's liked and subscribed. If you're listening back after the fact, hopefully we can do more of this kind of stuff in the future. It's not typical for me to do like little educational things, but I do love streaming. I do love talking to people. I do love learning. So if you like this, let me know. I am at Repkord on the Twitters and Instagram and all that stuff. Find a way. You guys are at CAD. Is it CAD_class? I will put all that stuff in the link. Look at that, Andrew Rogers. Thank you so much for your donation. We very much appreciate that. Always a great supporter, my friend. We will put any information into the description, where to get the book, who you guys are, where to find you guys on social media. And again, I would really encourage you guys, if you're learning to up your CAD game, Wednesdays, Jake and Josh do a fantastic stream where they go over this. They talk about stuff from the book. They answer questions. They do great office hours.
It's office hours.
It's
any questions you have, give them.
Super great sesh. This was so fun, man. Thank you again for your time. And guys, please go support them. Go get the free version. If you want to kick them $1 or $2 donation, I'm sure that's much appreciated. Goes in. Get in the Discord. Get engaged. Ask the questions. Don't be afraid to look stupid like me. I think that's a great way to learn and to grow as a maker, as a developer. And then until then, we will catch you guys on the next one. Jake, you stay with me for just a second. I'm going to sign off to the stream. And everybody, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Last minute plug too, if you're if you're gonna be around tomorrow, same time, I'll be back regular schedule with Andrew, and we'll actually have the other Andy from My Hero Me Cooling Solution on Maker That Money tomorrow. So for our regular podcast, and he is incredible. They've done some really great work on cooling customizations for 3D printing. So if you're into that, make sure you sign on and tune in for that as well. All right, everybody, be well. We will.